Yeah, so I'll just give a quick couple-minute demo here to show everybody what this is. So, I assume most people are probably familiar with NVM. So I don't have it installed, but I'll just show the brew information. It's just a tool to switch between different node versions. So if you have a project that needs node 18 or 20, then when you're in different project directories, you can switch between them. But there's other tools that may be a little less familiar, but like PyEnv, which is really just the same thing for Python. And then I think there's like GoEnv, and basically every language has a bunch of these different things. And so there was a developer that built this tool called ASDF, and it basically is just a polyglot version of this, right? So the idea is that it's one version manager that can switch between any language. And so that had been out for, I don't know, probably a decade. And I've sort of been in this like space of like building tools and working at big companies where I like try to find out how developers can be productive. And so like thinking about how developers work day to day has been a big part of my career. And so like I liked ASDF, but it was very slow because it's all written in Bash. It's just a bunch of crazy Bash. And it's really well done for being Bash. But the drawback there is just it gets very slow because every line of code is like calling a bunch of processes, right? So I thought, well, maybe I could rewrite it. And so I thought I could do the same thing in Rust, and I was kind of learning Rust. And that's effectively what I did. So Mise is just same thing, but built in Rust. So like if I let's see if I make proj 1, then let's say this is a project where I need node 20. So I say Mise use. Well, actually, I need to activate it.
I like the amount of tongue twisters or bad jokes you can make, like oh fuck, I just misused it.
Misused, yeah.
There are just
right.
way too many of them.
Yeah.
Nice one.
So you can say node 18 for this project. And so if I say node-v, we get a version of node 18. And let's go to proj 2. It works exactly how you think, right? So you say Mise node, let's say 22, which is not out yet, so that's not going to work. Then we get node 20. And like I already have these versions installed, but if you didn't, then it'll just fetch it if it doesn't already have it. And so this is basically just how I thought developers and even non-developers, or people just need different tools installed, would like to work. And so it's been really successful. I've been doing open source for a while, so this is my third like really big open source project, I'd say. But it's got, I think, like 5,000 stars on GitHub. We've been adding things like recently. One of the things I really like is like direct npm integration. Because what I hate doing is like npm install -g release please, for example, right? This is a CLI to help release software. But then it like ends up in this global node directory that I never will update. And it's just, I don't know, it's like somewhere between a black hole and like this thing that just goes out of date. But with Mise, you can say npm, and then you just say any npm package that might have a CLI. And you can say a version. If you don't, it just assumes you want the latest version. And so now when you're in this directory, it'll just have that.
Wait,
so
what? You have like you have like packages, like various languages, various tools, but now you also have like specific tools from inner package manager for specific version of specific languages.
Right. So I forget what languages we have now.
So PPX
but we have Go, we have npm, we have Rust, Cargo. Somebody's working on Swift and somebody's working on Python or pip.
So soon PPX is to be gone. Like we'll have Mise and that's it.
Well,
for most use case.
This is lipstick, right? So like it's probably going to use pipex, right? That's probably how it works. Is because there's really not much code in this because all I'm doing is putting an interface on top of it.
Yeah.
And this is all built on this file called mise.toml, and so that will contain like all the versions you use. And so whenever you have Mise loaded, it looks at this file to know what version of things to use, and so that's where you define like if you had a pip package, for example.
So do I need to install Node.js before I use Mise, or
Mise does the install for you? So like let's say you okay, I'm going to delete all the tools I have installed for Node, let's say. So now we could assume that I'm just going into this project for the first time, right? I just git cloned it and I'm working on something new. The command you want to run is mise install, and that's going to install everything if it doesn't already have it. And so in this case, since we're requesting Node 20.10, it knows that it needs some version of that. Yeah. And as Lucas said in the chat, like there's also the global one. So that's in I have like a different directory, but
yeah.
and then that way you can have like, a common thing is like, I want to have Node 20 as my general default, but then other projects can override it with a different version. And so you can define that like that. And then it can go further. Like obviously you can have a hierarchy. So like you can have a subdirectory of work projects and stuff like that. All the config stuff it's quite complicated, but it's effectively it can manage how you want to structure your projects.
So is it like project based for a particular project? I need this Node version and this Python version. Can it work on the both?
Yeah, and it can also use if you want to use like not Mise specific files. Like sometimes people like to just have like a .node version file, which is supported by a lot of language managers, although not notably, NVM is not one of them. But if you want to use this, where that'll work in FNM and I don't know, a few other node managers, it will support this too. So if I say Mise-LS, then we see 20.10, but that is the version mise.toml, right? You can see it's specifying that because it'll default to that. But if I then go into the mise.toml and delete that version of Node and run Mise-LS again, we'll see it's version 20 because that's what's in the Node version file. So there's a lot of different ways that you can set up your projects to define what versions of what languages you want to have.
Nice.
Yeah, it just shows up in red because that one is missing, but I just ran Mise install. Now that'll be in green.
It really is in the same mindset as infrastructure as code. Like we want to apply some config and have a specific infrastructure being deployed. Here we just have a specific configuration file, go Mise install, and we have the exact same setup as the person we want to work with. Even though we do not have like tons of Docker files and images, it's still on the host, which is
that's exactly right. And a big part of my philosophy around this is it should be declarative, as opposed to a tool like Durem, which I like Durem a lot, but I don't like that it's a DSL because I don't think that this is something you actually want to define as a DSL. I think it should be declarative, where you say like, I want this version of Node, and not like I'm running a command that then sets the version of Node. It's a subtle difference, but I think that you want to have some guarantee about how is the version of Node set, how is the version of Python set, because you can just make stronger interfaces that way.
And have a higher level description. You don't want to write queries nor code. You just want it to set something and work. So
yeah. And I think that like when you work in this file, things start to become very natural, right? Like one of the things I added that people really like is the env category. And so with this, you could just say, gitesh equals awesome. Now if I leave this, then as you might imagine, we have that already set, right? And so I think that this is super powerful, where you can just define your environment variables that are just such a good way to configure tools and projects. Like, you just have this really natural place to put it that sits right alongside your tools. Is so useful.
And this is for a specific project.
For that directory? Yeah, exactly. And then you can do the hierarchy, right? So like I could have subdir, and then I could put a mise.toml in here, and we could say git-tesh equals more awesome. And so when I'm in this,
where will this stop? Oh my god.
Right, so that's here. Yeah. So it works the way you expect, right? It's using a hierarchy.
Quick question, like you would want to have the Mise-toml project or like file being versioned and pushed to Git because you want every developer to have the same assumptions about the technologies being used, but you don't want your env to be auto-loaded. So would you like have an extra file, add an extra command, or like direnv.env or something more custom?
I've thought of this problem, and well, I don't know, you may know.
I did as well, but it's still clunky. Like so many ways to do things. Which is the way.
That's an important thing. Like you need to have like a local version. So there's a few different ways this can work, and for that specific problem, you can use mise.local.toml, and this is just a special alternate name. And so the by convention you would not check this file in, and so you can have secret. You can have some secret in here.
Can you please not paste my password in?
And so now we have secret, but then obviously I would
Git ignore that file and
yeah, you could ignore that. And then there's another thing I added, which is you can have environments. So certainly in web dev, a lot of the times we like to have a production toml, and that can have some other secret.
Looks like TerraGrunt or kubecontext, but for Mise. Like, how do you switch these envs with the? So
there's an environment variable called mise-en, and so when that is set to, let's see, set-x production, and we echo secret, and we get prod secret. But if it's staging or local or anything, then we'll get the one from the other one.
Damn, I was not aware of this feature, and this will just change so many things.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat about diremv allow, because so I think I have this config set. I can't remember where, but I have it automatically trust every file. Well, let me take a step back. So in diremv, if you have a NBRC, which actually I don't think I have diremv installed, so it won't work. Anytime you make a modification of that, it says like, do you want to trust this file? Because obviously, if you are cloning some project on the web, there could be a security risk in that.
You're doomed anyway.
Yeah, and so Mise has similar protections, although I see the problem a little bit different than them. I think diremv is a little too paranoid. So by default in Mise, it will warn you about a file, but it'll only warn you about that file once. It doesn't check the hash of it. But you can set that. So there's a setting Mise paranoid, and if you set this, then it will check. And so, and Mise paranoid does more than just that. It's basically like, the way I see it is there are users that care a lot about security and they want to be in a more high trust environment, and so they should set this, because the idea is it'll just turn on all the things to make it a little harder to use, but more secure. I imagine this audience would be very much a fan of that.
Might, but honestly, I just want to rant, like, just to get mad a bit about Mr. Zor, because like, for sure we want to have security, we want to have some low whitelist and more, but like, I know what IDE or command line editor he uses. I know like that he has some ZSH and probably tons of goodies in the shell. And like by just running set-x and going enter, there are just like so many hooks, files being sourced and more in the system all the time. And truly that's not one small .env that would make it worse. Like they're just, if you git clone something and cd into it and you don't know the sources, our today's shell have just like so many side behaviors, plugins, auto sourcing, even without Mise and Diran, that it's already a battle lost. So if
I think this is a problem in our community as a whole. That just
that's probably why you already have like you already have the allow all the time. Like you don't re-allow your Mise file, right? You do it once and voila.
By default, unless paranoid is set, then it will. Every time.
But it's because you acknowledge that it was kind of too late. Like if you git clone something, you either have to sandbox it or train a VM if you're not sure of it. Otherwise, it's already lost. I mean, anyway, you clone it to use it, to do some make, to do some. And if I can be backdoored, it's not an extra one that will mess things up.
I think for teams, like this is a really good thing, because when you are working on someone else's project or working as a team, everything become a lot more complex, right? There is no need to set up. There is a Mise. What are you pronouncing? Mise. Yeah, it will handle everything. I just need one tool to handle everything.
Should Mise replace Docker? Like, is there an overlap? Is it one, the other? It is Mise in Docker. It is for sure Docker managed by Mise.
My opinion on this is I think that Docker has a place when it comes to local development. I mean, certainly Docker is probably just unquestioned at this point for production. But for local development, I think that it has a place, but it's not the way I like to work. I like to have it there when I need to test something that's more like production, right? When I'm hitting some problem that I need a production-like environment, like I need to be on Linux and not Mac OS, and like I need things to look like production to test some bug, then Docker's really useful. But day to day, it's annoying, right? You gotta copy files in and out, and like getting to work with your editor, and and a lot of times it takes a long time to start, and then hot reloading is a problem, and so I think that running stuff on my Mac is just better. It's just I like it more, and so that's what Mise is for, right? It's to make that process better, and that's really what I made it for. Is local development, right? Like conceivably you could use Mise to install your production dependencies as well. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but it's not my primary use case. It's not the thing that I want to solve, because Docker solved that problem in a way that I can't. But I think the local story is where the community needs improvement. So that's really what it's built for.
Yes, I agree, because Docker adds a whole friction where you have to open the Docker and set it up and other things, right? But moving into the VS Code than the project and just using the Mise is more easier to use. Have a better user experience, especially when it solves the version problems, which usually occurs quite a lot.
Let me show you something though on that note. If I share my browser.
And that's a flashbang for viewers.
What's that?
The screen share just got away, so it just flashed everyone again. But that's okay. Like if you two can let me know 5 seconds before.
I'm about to share.
Yeah, I'm about to share.
Be prepared. So there's a GitHub action. I've actually found this to be
wait.
Useful.
I have to take your screen back. Like when you changed, I have to reassign labels and switch scenes again.
Oh,
we're good.
All good.
Yeah, zoom in a bit.
So
zoom in once or twice.
How's it look?
One extra.
Better? Oh,
Whoa.
I think I don't know what happened there.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, the YAML's a little. I think it's better. like this.
Yeah, that's way better.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Anyhow, so if you've seen, there was a question in the chat about CI, and I think we were kind of talking about it anyways, but, this isn't a use case I planned on supporting, but it just was easy to add. And so there's this GitHub action where you say Mise action, and you can specify Mise-Toml, but generally you wouldn't put anything in here, right? Like, because the default behavior is just, it's going to install all of your things. And so, effectively what you have is like, if you need shell check, for example, it's just going to be there, right? Because you've already defined it in your mise.toml in the root of your repository. And so, you can find all your dependencies here, and then you have a GitHub action. And then what's really nice is that you just define your versions of all your tools once in one place. And whether they're cargo dependencies or NPM or programming languages, it just will go and fetch them.
I feel like the GitHub workflow and action ecosystem just exploded real fast compared to GitLab CI. Like, no one shares GitLab CI templates, right? Like, close to no one. And GitHub action feels all over the place. Like, it's convenient, but I don't know why there is
I
such
don't know
a
if
huge
it's
difference.
the best. I mean, it is, you're right, it's ubiquitous, but like, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen anything better, but I don't love GitHub Actions. They are tricky to use, I find, and I write them a lot.
I spent my whole weekend on it fighting for Docker Packer builds with size limitation, time constraint, and also don't tell me about it.
Yeah.
That was a pain.
There's
then
a
it
project.
works. But,
I think Dagger.io,
Yeah.
I think is one that's like trying to solve this problem. I don't know how. I've never used it, but
Man, we covered Dagger in stream like some time ago now. Well,
did
it
you?
probably evolved. Yeah, we did. It probably evolved quite a lot in between, but it's not no problem. It's just different problems because we had like cool YAML files that are easy to review, easy to maintain, to switch to evolve like in bulk, and now you have code that you can paste AST and make like kind of like same-grep syntax evolution rules, like migration rules, and you end up manipulating AST instead of YAML. But in the end, you just ask the same tool to do things differently. You just have the logic on your end, or I have the data on your end and have the logic being done by the implementation. So feels more tedious, feels more flexible, but on the long run, is it fixing something? I don't know.
yeah. I don't know. It's a tough problem. I think I'm unsure if GitHub Actions are poorly designed. I wouldn't go that far because I think a lot of it's just what you're modeling is hard. Because even things like was it ACE or ABC? There's like a way you can run them locally, but like a lot of times you can't. Like, for example, the other day I was trying to write a GitHub action that does releases for Mise, and like I can't really test that, right? Because in order to run it, like I'm actually going to push a release to cargo, right? And so like you can do like alpha releases and stuff, but like it's really difficult to test those kind of things. And so some of that's
the way
just
I
the
go,
domain.
like hard fork, just hard fork the repo, just change the end image. That way, worst case, people will see on your GitHub activity, if not private, what you did. Otherwise, I can do test on my own and not cause noise on release channels and all. Otherwise, it's just too painful.
It's true.
It's too bound. It's too bound to the infrastructure. And
for me, that would
place.
Perhaps I should have done that, but it would be hard at this point because it's like it's not just GitHub. Like I push to NPM, to Alpine Linux, to a Debian package, right? Like I would basically need like a beta version of all of those. Now that I'm saying it, I should have a dry run capability. I just didn't bother with that.
For Santa wishlist, dry run capabilities, please.
I think that's the thing is like, because this is something I work in my spare time and like I'm not paid to do it. So like a lot of times I cut corners I wouldn't do at work, but I'm just like, I just need to get this to push, But yeah, the problem I created for my own. we have a question here.
Yeah, one for Mise within Windows. Is it a thing? Will it be a thing? Will it be a cursed thing?
It is. I don't know. So every once in a while, so it doesn't support it now, and it could happen with a lot of work. Part of the problem is the way that I should explain some of the backstory here that I didn't do before. So ASDF
I switched back to the face cam view, so take your time, like it's chilling.
Oh, okay.
Chatting time.
So, yeah, like ASDF is built on ASDF plugins, which are written in Bash. So that's a problem for Windows, right? So in Mise, I have moved away from that a little bit and started to write some of this code in Rust and some of it in other places. And presumably I could have a Lua interface maybe. Or maybe I could run Bash on Windows. I don't know. Frankly, I don't know much about Windows. I haven't used it in over a decade. So, I don't know what it would take to support. Somebody likely will have to just take this on that's like really committed, wants to see this. Or it might just be me buying a Windows laptop one day and just saying, yeah, I'll do it. Because I'd like to see it. But at the same time, I don't really want to.
Do you like so many things to handle, like pass, / UNC pass, normalization, hiccups, edge cases, like supporting one distro or one X-based distro is a thing, but going for the full, how can I say, the full crowd and support the 3 main ones would be painful.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of assumptions I make.
They have the Linux subsystem now. Like, if you need something, use the right tool. Just do not add patches and more patches. And
it may be something where it's like, rather than attempting that, maybe it would be better to just build a new CLI that can understand Mise.toml files. Maybe.
So that was the first question by Mr. Zorgen. I believe Mise is 100% path-driven. Is there still an ideological block, stubs, or is it something you'd consider in the future? What is WRT?
So shims are fully supported. It's not the way I tell people to use it, because I personally find that breaking which, right, is a big deal. So like in Mise, because it's path driven, if you say which node, it will show you the real path that the node is going to call, and not a shim. And I think that's, at least for my workflows, I rely on that a lot. And I find it incredibly frustrating when I run which and I get a shim. So frustrating that like, I think that alone means I don't think you should generally use shims. And so sort of the standard way of installing Mise is with the activation script that uses path. But there are use cases where shims are a lot better. One of them is in CI, for example, or actually any non-interactive environment where the way that works is every time the prompt is displayed, it regenerates your path environment. And so, in a script or in an IDE or in CI, the prompt never gets displayed. And so there's never a time for that to get updated. And so shims just work better there. And also you don't need which, right? Like you rarely need to call which in a script.
To be fair,
I find that
it can be used, but like,
I guess if you're trying to diagnose something, maybe that's true. But
then you have Mise which, and in that case, like, or ISDF which. But like, I want to just get back a bit on the interactive and non-interactive use case, because what you said is just so true, and it's also a funny-ish story. The way we met is that because I was sending an issue or adding comments to an issue on his repo, and some time ago I reached out and asked a few tips on how to use Mise within Ubuntu. So it's like Ansible scripts all the way to prepare the machine. And well, Ansible with non-interactive use of Mise was hell because it's meant to be interactive. And so I asked Jeff, like, hey, how would you do that to implement it in a distro? How would you do it the right way? And he answered me by pointing Lalubuntu repos code. And so, well, he asked questions and I answer by sharing him his own links. I ask question and issues I feed an issue and he answered about like, hey, look at your own implement. So that was just a funny way to meet, I guess. And
it was like days apart too, if I remember right. It's
days
really
apart.
funny.
Small world. And so it was, I can totally ensure that Mise with non-interactive context, you really have to go Mise do something, Mise run, Mise, but you will not want to invoke a pseudo shell and have it simulate a login shell and then try to source stuff. It will just end up badly.
No, it's bad. It's, and like I said at the beginning, like you have to understand that the use case I'm thinking of is like a developer that's trying to write code locally, right? Like I wasn't trying to make a tool for scripting or a tool for production environments. I wasn't thinking about the non-interactive use case,
And yet,
but people, it's amazing what people do. Actually, I could show you. I don't want to put this guy on blast, but he did something with Mise that I think is, I don't think I could find it now. But there's a guy who uses templates in an insane way. Like he's like writing code inside of the Mise config in like a bonkers way that I would not suggest doing.
Kind of like Jinja Twing config files that would then end up
something
in
like that. Yeah,
I've seen worse.
So Mise supports that, which was kind of a crazy thing for me to add. But so you can call processes in that, right? So inside of your template, you can use subshells to then execute code to do other things. And people have used this for wild things that I do not support, but
okay. Take notes. I want to see this one on the next part when we'll dig deeper. Like, take notes if you can show the code, like a really weird use case of the tool or crazy stuff that has been built on top of it. Go for it.
Yeah,
totally
it's
worth
like
having.
the XKCD about the spacebar, right?
I think I get it. I will keep on with the question, or do you want me to share your screen again? Yeah. Quick question before
I don't have
we
anything
go
to show
back.
right now.
You want to show you want to show right now? Or you?
I can.
Whatever works. Otherwise, I should
let's look at the
other
questions.
question. Yeah. Okay. So
There's one about
Zorgen.
scripting. When it comes to scripting, like I haven't really solved that problem. The problem isn't like the scripting thing. It's like, do I want to introduce yet another standard, right? Because ASDF plugins are sort of a standard that I use, and I've extended it in a handful of ways, but for talking about like Windows and having a non-bash interface might be useful, but it's like, okay, do I want to introduce the world to yet another thing? Right now, no. Right now, I don't want to spend that time on that. But someday it may be necessary. I think that
on Windows you have WSL, right? Windows Subsystem for Linux.
Well, but it works fine there, right? Yeah. So we're really just talking about outside of WSL, where and then I don't even use Windows, so I'm kind of the wrong person to make this. So I'm tempted to say Mise on Windows will just never happen. That's probably the most likely scenario. But no.
So usually what's happened, like I am an all-time Windows user, right? So I use WSL and it goes like my default terminal kind of, right? Because I want to use batch, obviously, and the tools inside somehow are connected, and I can launch VS Code and it will launch on my main desktop, right? So it get interconnected. In VS Code we have instead of command prompt, we can just select bash and it just moves shift, right? And I can easily use Mise or any other Linux tool available.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, for guys like me that write tools on Unix, like it makes me sad that my things don't work on Windows. So hearing things like this makes me more optimistic because I don't have to worry about it.
I'm kind of an opposite problem because currently there was a Rails.js that I was using. I cannot cross compile to other platforms because I'm using Windows. So that's another problem.
Even if on Windows side, like things tend to integrate well because there is a lot of work put into it. Like if you want your VS Code or application that is in a browser to just speak to Linux inside the WSL to work smoothly, like maybe now is the right time to join us at the Windows, like the Linux side of things, maybe. Like if you have something that works great only when the bridge to WSL is done the right way, join us. Don't imitate. Join us. Leave Windows.
Yeah, it's funny because actually it's getting worse in the Mac world because now we're not on x86 anymore, and so that I can run Rosetta, but like running x86 Docker on Mac OS is so slow, it's basically useless. So I'm kind of in that world now where it's getting harder to run normal Linux stuff.
Well, how is the Asahi project going? Like the integration of Linux for silicon chips and like ARM chicken chips? Is it moving forward? Is it released?
For just in general, running ARM on Linux?
No, like Asahi. So the Linux project that was
Asahi.
First. Yeah. It's hard for me to pronounce this one. Sorry. Like I don't know how it's going, but maybe they have been able to. I think they released a few iterations already to support Linux on Mac, like pure Linux.
Well, it works, but it's it works in what's that tool? There's an emulator. The problem is it's just so slow. It's hard to make much use of it.
No, that's the thing. Asahi is meant to run on ARM M1 and M2 with no emulator.
Right, but that you have to dual boot into that, right?
You can scratch your main OS. You can dual boot. You can scratch it, but that's the point. It's not it's not emulated. It's not virtualization either. It's really meant to be a Linux with taking into consideration the whole M1 M2 special instruction set and be able to run on it. It's just like the whole crowd of developers for Asahi. Come again?
Asahi. I think I shouldn't correct you because I actually don't know, but that's how I pronounce it.
Probably better than me anyway. So Asahi, they were really trying to get it working on bare metal, like bare metal Mac M1 and M2 processors. So that's the main goal. So if it's slow, it's not done yet.
Oh, my use case is a little different. Like that is obviously very cool, and I think that is useful. But my problem is I need to run Docker because, for example, there's this tool called Megalinter. That's this Docker image that can lint like any project, and it just runs hundreds of linters. But it only supports x86, and so if I run Docker run this thing, it takes hours. And so I'd like to be able to do that and not have it take hours. But for that to happen, they'd have to have an ARM build, right? And so, that's my personal use case that I'm annoyed by. But but Apple Silicon is so good that it's sort of worth it.
Yeah, I hate Docker too. Docker is I don't think it should be. There should be a replacement for Docker, something else.
It is nice for sandbox CLIs though, right? Like I think that like that use case, if it just ran faster, is great. Or like I could just run Docker run something, and it's like, it's not just a sandbox CLI. It's like also like a whole operating system with its dependencies and its system dependencies and everything set up just the way it needs to be. I think is not the way I want to run every CLI, but it's useful in some places.
Yes. So use case is useful, right? But the time consuming, so there should be a replacement for that particular thing. Either they decrease the time that it takes to the boot of any Docker or something. I think Mice
sorry, I'm
is
reading.
doing something like
Yeah,
that
same.
on locally for me.
Yeah, it's sort of Mise is trying to get as close as it can to building an environment for you, right? Like it doesn't. I didn't show that. There's three parts to Mise. There's the tools, there's the environments. I showed those, and there's also tasks, because another very common thing is like, you need to figure out how to install a project, you need to figure out how to test a project, how to lint a project, stuff like that. So I want to build an interface to that. So it's like you go into any project, and assuming people are using Mise for it, you just say Mise run test, Mise run lint, and it doesn't matter what language it was written in or anything. And so that's the idea. Is like you could think of it as just a general dev environment manager where it sets up everything for you. And like I feel like I'm kind of cheating because I'm able to do this because I'm relying on a bunch of other tools, right? Like I'm just building a UI and gluing all these things together that other people have worked very hard on that work very well, and just making a common interface so that it's one interface to run everything. And it's a bold goal of mine, but I'd like to be where it's like a standard thing in companies, where like you just come on the company and like if it's set up with Mise, even if it's just one developer on the team that they use Mise, they can share that with the other people that want to use Mise, and then any project you already know how to work. That's what I want to see.
Well, actually, Zor and I are pushing first SDF and now Mise more and more, but not forcing people, because that would be bad press.
No, you don't want to force anybody.
Trying to incentivize, to give the right incentive to use this one and make it broadly adopted would be way more pleasant, for sure.
I think I think you're right. I did sort of start to answer a question, and
there is an accurate question, like a really, really nice one. Do you plan to introduce a backdoor in Mise?
A backdoor?
Are you?
Oh, well, that's a good. I think it's a good topic for. This is one thing I really want to talk to you guys about. Actually, is
should we finish with the demo? Well, maybe first finish the demo with tasks and.
But let's put a pin on that, because I think talking about the security in Mise, because it actually has a huge problem. It's a big problem, that needs to be solved. But I could do a quick demo of the tasks.
I think having the full demo. Having the full demo and just a bit later go deeper with what we want to deep dive and discuss makes more sense. Yeah. Because security, I think that Gitesh has pretty much the same. Actually, your two tools rely on tons of other tools or other code snippets to work to the full. And in the meantime, you too want to keep the user secure and try to limit the amount of dependencies, but yet it's meant to rely on the other tools to be, not flexible, to be fully blown, to have all the features you want. You need to rely on them, and yet you don't want to leave too much room. So there is totally plenty of things to say.
The Mise is a lot worse because of the way ASDF packages work. A bad actor can just go and say, "Oh, I patched this ASDF plugin," and they can take ownership of it basically. And then after they get ownership, they can submit a backdoor with no oversight. That is a problem I inherited from ASDF, but it is a huge problem. Like it would, obviously the scope is lower than XC, but still, it concerns me. I can do a quick tasks thing. So
wait. Oh. Screen. Yeah, we're back on your screen.
Is it working?
Yeah.
So tasks. You could say, I'm going to say runs the battle. Say test, running the tests. I think I have lint implementing the code. And then you say Mise run test, Mise run lint. Like that's the 10-second demo. But I think that it does a lot more. It has dependencies, and you could have it replace make, and like it even gets into where it could be a build tool, which is not really. I want to focus on tasks and not building projects. Like I don't want to replace
make files.
Yeah, make it what's the Google thing? I forget the name.
Bazel.
Yeah, like that's like an area I'm not trying to really get into. It's more the, I can see Mise calling that,
Yeah,
but
just
it
want
does
like
have
package JSON, kind of package JSON or PyProject TOML, and you want to have specific subtask or subscript like alias, but within Mise. Aliases within Mise.
Yeah. Mise does have support for like, only run this task if this file changed, right? So like how you use make typically, right? Like only run GCC on this file if the object file is older.
Like
it supports that
stuff.
It does that too, but that's different. This is just checking if it's old, if the file needs to be rebuilt because its source changed. But with the iNotify stuff, there's also Mise watch, and then you can run.
You can run into issues.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. That looks like a bug.
Task not found default. Yeah,
I don't know why that.
Try watch lists. A lint.
Is it -T?
Nice.
I think you need -T for reasons I can't remember.
Task.
But yeah, now if you run a file, here again, I'm cheating because all this does is run watch exec with whatever you typed in. That's all it does. So you need to have watch exec installed that just executes that with the right arguments sent, because that was easier.
Do you also go with the saying surfing on the shoulder of giants? Like we use that everywhere in security because we know that what we can do now, even if it's simple commands on specific attacks or using tools on really huge code base, is something that we can do only thanks to people that were there before, that dug the first holes, built the first walls. So we are always surfing on the shoulder of giants. And yes, Mr. Zor, surfing. I have no water anymore, no coffee anymore.
Yeah, I think with ASDF is obviously the biggest influence. I mean, that's how Mise got started, was just as a straight clone. I don't really call it that anymore because I'm trying to go into things like tasks and stuff that ASDF never attempted to solve. But really at a certain point, I had to realize that like ASDF was a different project that this is transcended, right? Like I've gone beyond that, and it supports all the use cases ASDF has, with one very, very small exception, which I guess I could explain that because I brought it up, so I know people would be curious. The one place that ASDF is arguably better is if you want to have it all in Bash, right? So the problem with having something in Rust is you need to either compile it or you need to have a precompiled binary for your architecture, right? Now, if that's symlink to OpenSSL, that has to all link up, and it's like just all the problems that come along with binaries you don't have
pre-built. Do you want pre-built or build on site or cross-compile or
and then it's like, well, the maybe you guys don't see these problems as much as me having like built tools, but like you run into issues with libc being out of date, or shared objects not existing in places you expect them to.
Actually, I've had issue with this one like maybe 2-3 days ago, like using Mise to install Python, but like the CPython compiled one works really fast, but some modules are not sometimes linked the right way. But yeah, that's just dependent on the ASDF plugin, so the plugin itself. Unless for some specific use case, but while trying to add Mise settings compile, Python compile one, just force the local build of it and fixed everything. So even when you have issues, you know that the tool is flexible enough to self-patch and keep going, like not waste too much time. Well, it took us quite a while to detect what was going wrong, but once you know it.
Yeah, I mean, inevitably I see these problems a lot because I hear from the users where it doesn't work. So I don't know how common they are really. I know it's not insignificant. Actually, the one you mentioned, I think, is notable because poetry doesn't work on those precompiled Pythons, and those precompiled Pythons are what Mise uses by default. I should probably fix that. I should probably. There is a warning in there, but it doesn't call out poetry specifically. I should probably put that in there because poetry is just such a popular Python package. Unsurprising problem, but at the same time, precompiled binaries are so nice, right? Like, I think that it's an unfair comparison, but because of this, Mise is 100 times faster at installing Python than ASDF, right? Because all it's doing is downloading it, whereas in ASDF, it has to go and compile it. But I put a poll out. There was a quiz or a survey I asked. I was like, what do you guys want? Like, do you guys want precompiled where it's going to fail sometimes? Or do you want the default to be compiled where it'll work all the time, but it takes 2.5 minutes to install? And people voted, I think everyone that voted on that voted for precompiled.
And yet we tried to build PHP. PHP, like, people vote, but for different languages or plugins, it's not the same for all behavior. Like PHP by default is built, Python by default is pre-built binary download. Like,
Yeah. Obviously, there's a setting for this, right? So you could even configure Mise like, I want to compile everything, which if you're running Alpine Linux or NixOS, I don't know why anybody uses NixOS with Mise. Like, I think that those are like polar opposite. Like, I think if you're the type of person that uses Nix, you probably are not going to like Mise. I do not like Nix.
I will ask because we do have one intensive Nix user, and I think close to be our sometime developer, like when he finds some time. And I'd be happy to have their feedback. So I know we have some.
Maybe we should have a debate one day. You should put me with it because I.
Well, you are in our Discord. You are able to read French. Well, better than I speak English.
I don't know if I can have a debate in French. That'll take me a bit.
You can answer in English. People will just cope with it, or just start a fight in the general English channel. Go for it.
Yeah. No, I try not to be like the resident Nix hater. Mise, I think, has filled a gap that Nix also fills, and I've really chosen to go hard in this easier to use world where things like precompiled make sense, right? Because I think that just makes the tool better in the 90% use case. Right? Like, if you use a Mac and you just want to be the most standard basic developer that just uses as default everythings, you're going to like Mise a lot because it fits that. If you run Alpine and like care a lot about how things are compiled and what versions are being used, you'll probably find Mise to be quite frustrating because it just makes so many assumptions.
It's a black box. It just is here to work, but not be optimized to the full, maybe.
Yeah. And actually, this is the last question in chat about SBOM and reproducibility. It's not, right? Mise will never be reproducible. It's going out to the internet and fetching sources from God knows where. Well, I know where. You just have to trust me, right?
Actually, we could have something like the equivalent of Tough in Toto to have the build being verified by exposing keys and trusted source in the first place, and have some some sort of chain certificate validation. But it will at least have to be based on the release files from GitHub. Otherwise, it just goes too deep, I guess. Like you can
well,
track
I
every
think
library.
you get into like the supply chain for how are those things built, and effectively what you need to do is you need to do this logic for every plugin, every language that Mise supports, which is unrealistic. And this is where I said like I'm going in a different direction, because if I started to do that work to make it reproducible, I'm just building Nix, right? Like that's what it is. Like that tool exists and it's Nix, and like if you want to use it, you can. But I think the day-to-day experience of working with Nix is quite frustrating for people. I actually built Mise in part because I found Nix so frustrating to try to use. It's just like I compiled it to build Vim, and then like the version of Ruby that was inside of that wasn't interacting right with things out of it. And I think the actual developer experience of Nix is horrible. It's one of the most I find it to be one of the most difficult things I've ever used in my life. It's like up there with Kubernetes. It's like, why do I want my developer environment to be like that?
Okay,
like, I want it to be easy.
When have you tried it? Because I know that maybe it evolved in the past month, years. Like, I don't know. I'm not.
I probably haven't used
user,
it it's probably been a year and a half now.
Okay.
So could be better.
Well, it already is on my to-do for future streams with guests, because I can't take this one on my own. But totally looking forward and try to compare and maybe add that to the note for future feedback on how to either integrate or, I don't know, like be better and get rid of them. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think it's okay. Like it's okay that Nix exists, because it's like it does that reproducible thing. And then I make the decision not to support that, and that makes it so I can do other things better that Nix can't do.
Yeah. Isn't there a middle ground though?
No. I don't think it's possible, because it's it comes back to what are your shared objects, what are your system dependencies, and how are those built? And if you want a reproducible environment, then the way that Nix has gone about it is it just makes its own environment that is fully reproducible. Whereas with Mise, I just assume that the environment is standard, right? Like if you're on a Mac, that's why it works well. Because if you're on a Mac, everything will go through. If you're on a standard Ubuntu machine, you won't have a problem, right? It's only when you start customizing it gets hard. And so making that assumption, it just integrates with everything, right? Like however you install things, those also use the same dependencies. And you're not on this like split brain sort of setup where like you have your Ubuntu and you have your Nix, and then like you have the stuff that was built with Nix and stuff that was built here. And that is reproducible but difficult. Whereas for me, I'm working within the system and assuming the system is built in a standard way. And so yeah, I don't think there's a middle ground between those two models, because you're either in or you're out.
Well, I agree, but I would not have used these examples nor this reasoning. Like, this makes sense, but to me, like, we are speaking about SBOM and checking where things come from. And it's checking either all of it, or if you miss just a few because you intend to, there's close to no point in checking, because that's where people will attack or try to push bad stuff. Like, it seems to be the same debate as for should we have Rust to have fully safe code? And if you start by having 1 or 2 or 3 unsafe calls, then there's no point in trying to stick this piece of code that way, unless you really plan to move it in the future. But if you start by having a few unsafe places,
I suppose that's true, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think you're right. Like there's, I could probably make things reproducible and support SBOMs and also rely on system dependencies. I think it's harder because you're not starting from like one place, and also like it would take hundreds of people to do this effectively. Like I'm just one person with a handful of people out there, and this just has to be done differently for every programming language, and that's where the problem gets really hard. Like I could make this work for Node, I could make this work for Python, but
the manual requires just
plugins.
way huge. Yeah,
we have 1,000 plugins, and like that's not even including all the stuff that's installed with Cargo and npm, right? and forget it, right? like I don't even have the capability of solving this for npm probably. No one person I think could do that. So it's just as Mise grows and I support more ways to install things, this problem just gets harder and harder, and it's getting further and further away. And
I like it because when you say no one can do that, there is Gitesh like, I have a plan. I'm gonna fix that overnight.
No, I'm just concentrating because in Grroxy, when I will implement the same thing for installing the tool, so I'm just taking notes.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those other things that, like, as a community, we're just not good at. Like, there's this whole supply chain problem that I think is just a huge problem.
Yeah, and we just, I won't say we close our eyes, because we try. There are a few solutions. There are, S-bombs. There are ways to encrypt the whole chains. There are ways to verify artifacts, but the attack surface is just so huge with every package manager like PyPy, NPM, RubyGems and all. Like for all these sites, it's quite recent that when some, let's say, some maintainers die, they are tech people, so of course they have their own email system on their own domain, and 1 or 2 years later you can just buy it, push your backdoor with password reset or whatever, and you're good to go, or just wait for the next breach and backdoor anything. You need a code review? Cool, just wait to have 2 maintainers on specific project. Cool. Yeah, there are just so many ways that we have to accept and maybe try to be more reactive or resilient to such issues, but not expect nor hope that it will one day be gone.
No, and this XC thing is just wild, right? Because no amount of oversight. And my understanding is, and maybe you guys know more about this than I do, but my understanding is like this is somebody that was contributing regularly to the project for years. And I don't know if he got hacked or he just spent a lot of time building features and stuff. And, there's no way to protect against that, right? We can have the best security model in the world and everything be signed and S-bombs are reproducible, and this is still gonna happen.
Yeah, you cannot beat social engineering at any point.
Yeah.
Question for
I mean, it's an XE thing. It once every 2 decade thing. I don't know. But I think we gotta be aware of the risk.
Hacked in the similar way, right? They just social engineer the customer care or someone else in the company, then get access to it. Like the Twitter hack where Elon Musk and these Bill Gates and all posted the message for the crypto or NFT something. The same thing happened at that time as well.
Yeah, I don't give anybody access to the Mise code base at all. It's just me, and if I die, you guys will have to figure out what to do, because I would not give anybody access to it. And not because I don't trust anybody, but it's like, I could get hacked, right? I try to do my best, but if I bring one other person onto the project, they could get hacked. And I think I've doubled.
That's the thing. That's the thing. If you are the only maintainer and you make every approval to require, let's say, the whitelisting or approval, like every merge request to require the approval of 2 other specific individuals, then you have a decent ground for giving some lead. You can go on vacation. It matters as well. You have to be not required for the project to function, even though it's your baby and you want to keep it.
Well,
but over time, being able to let go sometime and have a crowd of sharp person being able to take the lead or just help, even when you're not there or hurt, that's one less burden and pressure. That matters.
But that doesn't worth the risk, right? Maybe go on holiday, just pause the working on it, right?
Yeah, that's what I do. I don't need to be available because it's just a CLI, right? So there's never
next time you're on holidays.
PR, right?
Next time you're on holidays, if there is one weird bug, something that gets released, and Mise is slowly, surely gaining a lot of users. If for some reason the default install for one DNS that died falls back to something else, you really want this day will be willing to react fast And if you're not there, no one will be able to react for you. So having one garde-fou, so one person that can take extra action, like you would not go in a car that has no safety features or backup mechanism. Having at least one way to redund you matters.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, I think the reality is with CLIs, this just doesn't happen that often. But it's conceivable. Yeah. You know.
On the
Maybe
side,
a person you know in real life.
Yeah, I mean, so for the plugins, there's an advisory board that we have, and there's 3 people that I know personally that are on there that I trust, and you know, I could give them access. So I already have the people that would do it. It's just, you know, I take security as serious as I can, and so
that's the
one
thing,
of the ways, you know,
they don't have access and they can't backfire. Like if you are 3 of you and you make pull request mandatory by 2 users, like let's say more 4 of you, and you make 2 approval mandatory, it means that at any time 1 person can be away and still the project will not only move forward with a consensus. So you will need 1 backdoor account or 1 person getting hacked and the 2 others to really go like, looks good to me, click, click. I hope it will not happen with people that manage that important project, but that way you can still have the security benefits unless, let's say, some GitHub employee gets hacked.
I think it's not realistic. Like, so
Okay.
for a few reasons. So, I mean, yeah, it would be, but like, remember, we're not just talking about GitHub commits. Like, I have access to I don't use S3, but imagine I did, right? Like, I need to have the AWS key for that, right? And so, like, you don't need GitHub to get into the S3 bucket and change the binaries.
Actually, you might. What if everything is CI based and CI triggers only on master pipelines for the secret access, and you make merge to master mandatory with reviews?
At the end of the day, in my 1Password, I need the owner credentials for the AWS account that stores this, right? Like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get out of that, right? Like, just being an open source project. If I was an organization, it'd be different, right? There are ways to do this, but like, it's, you know, because this is an account that's like something I own personally, there's no way for me to get out of like, I need to have the master keys. I need to have access to them, right? Yeah. It's just, you're just going to push the problem out to that, right? Where I've got the credit card, I need to have access to that. And so, you know, I mean, let's be honest, everybody's trusting me to make sure that my accounts don't get hacked, because that could happen. So, you know, I do what I can.
And that's the thing, like, I hope and I think there are already systems where we could enforce even your code to be PR reviewed. Like, it's probably hard to do that at GitHub level, but like on bypass URL parser, what we have is that pull requests are mandatory, like review are mandatory. And if the settings change, like if I self disable, because even my code needs to be reviewed before being merged on bypass URL parser. So even if I get backdoored, I don't care, people will not whitelist my code. I hope they will read it and it will not make it to production. But if I do on my own try to disable this setting of enforced pull request reviews, or like code add-on reviews, then an alert should be sent to the other contributors so they can react fast. And like, if they are more than 30, so like let's say 80% of the contributors, then they can agree or disagree or take over my account and kick me out. I don't know. But it's hard.
Organizations can get around this problem, right? Like, because even things like master keys, they can be put in a safe somewhere, right? Or like, you could have a system where
when you want very consortium to do so.
It's an unreasonable amount of work for me to do, but for an organization, especially a big one, they can and do these things, right? And there often needs to be like a break glass thing, but then that notifies people, and like, you know, it's it is mostly a solved problem, I'd say, for organizations, even though it still takes a lot of work. But for open source projects, this is not the answer. I don't think it's great, right?
Yeah,
it's
but
just,
when
it's not
and
realistic.
if you are hacked, people might get mad at you for fucking their holidays up because they know they have to patch, take care of a release cycle and on. And you are, well, first you did everything you could to protect them, but still you are the guilty one because you had no mechanism, like no one to ensure you were not going crazy. Like almost kind of the same like what happened with Adblock and Adblock Plus. Like it was cool. The owner went, well, don't quote me because I have not fact checked, but we chatted about it with friends a lot.
He sold this extension, right? Isn't that what happened?
That's why I say don't quote me. But to me, the full story is like he was working on it, decided to give ownership to someone that was motivated and dedicated. He did so, but it did so by just asking in the project issues, hey, who wants to take ownership? Someone was like, hey, I want to do so. Gave it right away, out of nowhere, someone that no one knew, and the person just let the project die, added some sponsorship links and all. And the creator came back, forked Adblock Plus, and then from that got mad and over time still sold it anyway. But as said, don't quote me, this is from discussion I've had with, well, friends Hendrix, so might be accurate so. But that's what I heard and rehearsed about it. But we should gather more facts before trashing people.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what happened in this case, it's entirely plausible that this could happen. It could happen to Mise, right? Like it could be, maybe I get tired of working on it one day and I pass it off to Gitesh, and Gitesh is a nice, honorable guy, and there's no reason not to trust him. And maybe he runs it for a few years, and then he hands it off to somebody else when he's no longer interested.
That's where the whole Git thing goes perfect. Like your project worked, cool. If at some point you go crazy and do shit, people fork, and it still works. Voila. Simple. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Simple. Just take some time for the whole ecosystem to evolve to the new one, but yeah.
Yeah, that's why I'm not too worried about the bus scenario, right? Like if I get hit by a bus and I'm dead, like you guys can rename it and life goes on, right?
Nah,
like I don't.
No rename.
Like,
I'm not, French name, no rename.
It's like there are bigger problems in the world, right? Like
yeah.
Actually, I don't know if you guys have seen the tool EXA, but I'm pretty sure this is what happened. Like it just went dark. Actually, I think he might be Ukrainian, so it might be a really sad story, but I don't think we know. But it was a great tool, and he just has dropped off the face of the earth. Nobody in Git, as far as I understand, knows what happens. They forked it to Easy A, and like that's fine. I think that's like a totally acceptable way around the problem.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to talk because it's obvious. It appears to be a very sad story there, but it's life, right? Like we got to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Yes. Like when I was releasing or announcing the Grroxy, I quickly created the landing page. I thought that it's been a 1 year or something of work, and if I die in between, there would nobody going to know that this thing exists in someone's laptop, right? No one is going to pull out of it. So let's announce it as quickly as possible.
I noticed something you said, Gitesh, which is that you're sort of waiting to release it, whereas I've always been the opposite. I like get in it and I push it up, and I'm just I'm pretty cavalier about it. And I get myself into trouble because then people start using these things, and then like I realize I need to change them, and so I need to put breaking changes in. That can get quite frustrating, but I think you probably make the right decision, but it's just not how I see it.
Guys,
for open source project, I do the same. if I like in the beginning, it was not sure that I will go on the open source direction or which direction. So that's why it was
Yeah.
like that.
Fair answer. Depends.
Yeah, still, the whole code base was like since two months I am refining and refactoring things, but it was like just I put it and I understand it. That's enough. It was completely mess.
Well, every project tends to be at some point, unless it's written, and while true, it was the same thing again. Guys, we'll have to wrap up. If you don't mind, we'll take the few questions, try to offer a quick conclusion. And anyway, are you two okay to do next episode together?
I am certainly.
Fine with me.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's fun.
Lovely. So let's wrap up with the question. Be really careful, Jeff, because Mr. Zorso is currently one of my, I think, 2 most technical colleagues. So sharp as hell, but as sharp as grumpy. And so he is asking, as sharp as grumpy, that's the way. He's asking how can the community help you overcome these problems, and how can the community get involved, help you, either man work or brainstorm on?
I think I answered this, which is that I don't want to, right? Like, it's just not a problem I'm interested in solving.
You don't want, you mean the project about SBOM and all, or in general you don't want people to get involved? Like, I think this was related to this one, but also can be broader. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a big question. I think I'm open to ideas if people have some ideas on how it could be reproducible, but everything that I've thought of, I don't want to do because it's a lot of work. Frankly.
Yeah, no, I meant
and
for
like
this one.
Is something I do for fun, and it just doesn't interest me, right? And it's not that I don't recognize the problem. It's just I don't think the problem is big enough to feel like I have to solve it. But that said, like I am not a security guy, and so if people have ideas from your community about maybe there's something I haven't thought of yet that we could do that would make things more locked down. Yeah.
Okay. And if we step back from the whole SBOM and lifecycle question, like if people want to get involved, you accept PR issues, just bug fix, production, everything?
I do. I'm also the BDFL, right? The Benevolent Dictator for Life. So I may reject your change if I don't like it. But I'll actually, it's been getting a lot more contributors lately. I think Mise has started to grow, and I think I'm maybe 50% now, whereas it used to be I was 99% up until a couple months ago, and I think now I'm probably around 60 to 50% of the work in Mise is done by me, and the rest is done by other people. And so I think that number will shrink over time. And so, I'm more and more relying on external contributors. But it's always best if you want to do something is come in the Mise Discord and talk to me about it before you start, because just please do that, because I may already been thinking about the problem you're trying to solve and have ideas on how it can be done, or think it shouldn't be done, or think it should be done a different way.
That's really uncommon.
That with any open project. People don't do this, and it really frustrates me. Like they just give you a drive-by PR, and I'm like, I feel bad because I know they worked hard on this, and I don't want it, and that sucks. I don't want you to work hard on something and then have me turn it down. So please talk to me and other contributors. Everybody has a chat, and they don't mind if you come in and talk to them about it.
Okay. I'm being yelled at by Zor in DM because
I do say no. I have no problem telling people no.
But, no, not what I meant. Not what I meant at all. Like, I'm just getting yelled at by Zor because you were answering to him.
Yeah. Sorry,
okay. My bad. Yeah,
I should be clear. He said, keep saying no. I do say no. I'm not going to include something just because I feel bad. But I have empathy, and I don't like to see people have worked hard on something and then get told no, because I know how that feels. And this is such an easy problem to avoid, right? Because it's one line in chat. Hey, I'm thinking of doing this, and we could end it there, and it doesn't have to.
Yep. Still he yells at me because I took too much time to ask you the question from the chat. So, panic. Guys,
he has a lot of good questions, though.
He does. But I think he will try to either contribute or push toward a few things. But there is one cheat keywords. Like, do you know in French, digresser?
No, I'm not familiar.
When you want to chat, la digression ou la digression, pardon. When you chat about something and really quick, really fast, you just chat about like 4 topics at the same time and you completely lost the first point, and so you had to work for 1 hour and you are left with 5 minutes and you chatted about everything else. So
you have a word for that? That's
no, wow, there is like nous avons digressé. Like we were speaking about something and we just like walked away in our thoughts. And so it happens all the time with him. So if you do try to collaborate, we have the
same word in English. Digress. Yeah. I just, the way you described it sounded more complicated, but no, we definitely have that word in English. Yeah.
Try to chat someday, and if he goes crazy, just go give him the D word, and should do the trick. Diksha is there tomorrow. Nice. Oh, sorry.
Everyone giving you the PRs, there should be a button. Like when you're rejected, instead of there should be something that's encourage them to apply and before asks. Like instead of just your PR is closed, because it's hard especially for students who are trying to learn and apply new things, and when their PR get rejected, right? So like
it actually takes a lot of my energy to say no. It is way harder for me to say no because I need to do it politely, right? It's important. Like it will hurt somebody's feeling, and it really does. So you have to be very careful, I think, when you say no. And that's actually kind of a big burden because it can be difficult. You have to really understand what they're doing, where they're coming from. And I think this is another reason I have a bone to pick with this, is because I don't want to have to do that. It's a lot of work for me. Right?
I know. You know, so it's like I know, like you have to review that there should be a valid reason why you are declining this, and you have to calculate.
A lot of times I spend more energy on that than the person did writing it. And I still feel obligated to do that. Sometimes these are things that'll keep me up all night. Seriously, like if it can be really hard.
Yes. Yeah. No, not you for in general, but in a GitHub, there should be a button or something like that. Politely close the request automatically instead of maintain and.
I don't think it'd work, because I think even that would get taken the wrong way. I think that. I don't know what to do about this. It is a human problem. I think rejection is just such a human feeling that sucks. Anyhow, I could talk about this all day.
Right. Maybe accept it and never merge it.
I think it's a cultural thing. Like I think we are particularly sensitive to it in a way that I know like Europeans and Indians, you guys are less so. But like, when we get told no, we really take it hard. Like it's very upsetting to us.
No, I think it's same everywhere. It's same everywhere.
Yeah.
It hurts the ego directly when somebody says no. It hurts the ego.
I somehow patched and reverted my patch for the stream timer overflow, but it was a simple timer overflow and now it's even more buggy. What have I done? Like you don't see it within the stream, it just looped and said that we are streaming in 23 hours or so, but I fixed it last time and I've reintroduced the bug. Nice. Guys, it's getting a bit late here in France. Almost no one but Zor is still up, so I think we'll wrap up and keep we have already still like tons of things to say for the next stream. So like how the two tools are being made, the roadmaps, the way security and dependencies is taken into consideration, lessons learned, way win and fails. So yeah. Let's close it here and take more time on the next one. All right.
That's great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Same here. It was truly a pleasure to welcome you both. Even more with this English stream, which has not taken place in like a year or so. So I hope it was okay, both guest side and viewer side. Thank you two for being there, and thank you, viewer, for being there as well. Do you want to say a few last words before we close?
Yes, thanks for the invite and inviting GDX with it, because 3 of it we talk a little bit and chit chat. Otherwise, it would be just 2-person chatting with each other. You know?
Yeah, it's better to have more interactivity.
Yes, and it was fun.
Glad you liked it.
Yeah.
Shared. Well, Jeff, French tongue twister.
I can't remember it.
Yeah, no trouble on this one. Bye, take care all. À la prochaine. Passez une bonne soirée. Et thanks for staying by. Cheers.
Bye bye, and nice to meet you both.
Yeah, talk to you later.